With Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 only a couple of weeks away, many of us are excited to once again delve into the madness that is the Playtime Co toy factory. But while many fans are looking forward to more new characters and more scares, there are those of us that are most excited to learn more about the story. Despite already having 3 whole chapters and 75 ARGs, there are some burning questions that we still need answers to. So here are 5 of the biggest ones that I hope we get answers to in Chapter 4. Number 1. Who the hell is Doughy? We've had a lot of new toy reveals in the run up to Chapter 4, with many people confused as to who the main villain is going to be. We've had Sweet Sheep, Baba Chops, we've had Yarnaby, Pianosaurus, and now even Harley Sawyer himself. But the one character that hasn't been fully revealed yet is the silliest sounding one of all, Doughy the Doughman, which honestly sounds like the name I call myself after all that Christmas food. Now what's really interesting about this is that usually the main villain of the chapter isn't fully revealed until the final trailer. Mommy and Catnap were only fully revealed on their final trailer before their chapters released. So if Mob are using the same logic, then that means either Doughy is the main villain of Chapter 4, or it's someone else we haven't thought about. But then we've had several hints of someone wearing a hat and they haven't been fully revealed yet. In before Mr. Potato Head is the main villain of Chapter 4, and honestly, that would be kind of terrifying. Either this hat belongs to Doughy, or there is yet another mystery character waiting for us in the next chapter. I actually think there's a good chance that there will still be surprises. After all, Mr. Light was kept in complete shadow until Chapter 3 released, so I'm sure Mob will leave something to shock us inside Chapter 4. But either way, with how silly this name is, I want to know who this character is and why Mob seem to be holding them out till last. Number 2. Is Huggy really still alive? This mystery has been teased ever since we saw Huggy's fur back in Chapter 2. At the end of Chapter 1, after a very intense chase sequence with the big blue bugger, we caused Huggy to fall to what we thought was his death. But in Chapter 2, we found what looked suspiciously like Huggy's fur and blood on this wall and on the girders below. This immediately caused myself and many others to suggest that Huggy could still be alive, and this was evidence that he climbed back up. Of course, the other alternative is that Experiment 1006 lifted Huggy up himself to add him to what we think he is building. A horrific amalgamation of dead toys. I mean, we saw that the prototype could lift Catnap with one hand, so it's very possible. But I think that is the more boring of the 2 possibilities. Huggy returning would set the stage for an epic showdown, especially if this time he is damaged and even more monstrous than the first time. He could still be added to that monster after we fight him off a second time anyway. Now he did take a pretty hard blow to the head on the way down, so perhaps this time he's even more aggressive, possibly even suffering from brain damage. It's clear that Huggy Wuggy is the face of Poppy Playtime. He's the most recognizable character, and Mob Entertainment know it. So from a business standpoint, it makes sense to bring him back, if for no other reason that damaged Huggy plushies would probably sell like hotcakes. Mob likely knows this too because they are constantly using him in their marketing, even going so far as to use a fake Huggy in Chapter 3, but even they teased recently that Huggy has been in every chapter. I think the chances are higher that Huggy will return, it just remains to be seen whether that will happen in Chapter 4 or later. Now there is even a chance that we heard Huggy in Chapter 3, and that ties very nicely into my next point. Number 3. Who attacked Kissy? Right at the end of Chapter 3, just as we were about to get some important information from Poppy, we heard what sounded like Kissy being attacked. It's always just as we're about to learn something juicy. Now this seemed to really shock Poppy. She had likely assumed that Kissy was safe up there since we'd already taken care of all the bigger body experiments. So who or what exactly attacked Kissy, and why was Poppy not prepared for it? Well, there are actually quite a few possible candidates for this one. One possibility that it was actually Dog Day that attacked Kissy. The last time we saw him, he was still, well, sort of alive. He was being controlled like a puppet by the smiling critters that had been using him as a snack. It's possible that he had been slowly making his way to us this entire time. I mean, it would take him a while since he had, no legs. But then it could have even been the prototype himself. We have seen that 1006 is capable of violence. He attacked staff members when he tried to escape his cell, and we have strong evidence that he caused the Hour of Joy. But violence always seems to be his last resort. He gave us plenty of opportunities to leave the factory, and he seemed to try and reason with Harley Sawyer before resorting to unleashing the bigger bodies. This could explain why Poppy was so surprised. She didn't expect the prototype to attack an experiment like Kissy, since it seems like he does everything in his power to protect these orphans. But now, since we know that we are headed to where Harley Sawyer was locked, it could make sense that 1006 viewed violence as his last resort to stop us. Of course, there is the possibility that it was one of the new experiments, Yarnaby, Pianosaurus, and so on. Perhaps there was another elevator or another way to travel between these areas that Poppy wasn't aware of. Now, one thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting is that Boxy Boo is still roaming around the factory somewhere. As I will come on to later, he should, in theory, be showing up in this chapter, so he's also a possibility. Once again, I think the most interesting theory is that it was Huggy who attacked Kissy. Poppy states very clearly that we killed Huggy, but like in any good horror game or movie, if you don't see a dead body, assume they're still alive. Oh, and that also applies to PJ Pugapilla too. Who knows where he went after our game with him. But if Huggy did indeed climb back up in Chapter 2 and has been watching us ever since, then perhaps the prototype sent him to stop us once Catnap failed to do so. This would be a very interesting concept. Huggy and Kissy are shown to be friends in CG5's music video, so seeing them now as enemies would be a total reversal. Seeing how these children are torn apart from their friends to be used by the adults is a common theme of the series, so this would mirror what we've already seen before. Either way, I hope we get to find out who attacked Kissy in Chapter 4, and this isn't yet another fake out. Number 4. Where is Boxy? There are several toys that are currently missing in Playtime Co. A Bigger Bodies Bron was shown in the first ever trailer for the game and we haven't seen him yet. PJ Pugapilla could still be on the loose, and of course, there is the chance that Huggy or Dog Day are still roaming around the factory somewhere. But one bigger body that should be a key part of this next chapter is still missing. Boxy Boo was Harley Sawyer's first successful bigger body experiment. We now have confirmation that Sawyer is going to play a big part in Chapter 4, but this means that Boxy Boo should show up in this chapter. Just like Yarnaby, Boxy seems to be allied with Sawyer. I use the term allied loosely. Harley sent Boxy to take care of Rowan Stoll when he got too close to uncovering some Playtime Co secrets. And both Yarnaby and Boxy have been shown to show a clear favoritism towards Sawyer. We now know that this is because he conditioned them psychologically, likely using hunger as a primary motivator. This actually shows us how 1006 and Sawyer have more in common than they would like to admit. The prototype feeds the toys that follow him, and Sawyer made sure Boxy's appetite was tailored towards flesh. I do think the phrase, "bite the hand that feeds you," will come into play at some point. But knowing that Boxy was last seen alive in the factory in the Hour of Joy VHS tape, and knowing that he is an ally of Sawyer, I think there is a very good chance we will see Boxy in Chapter 4. After all, Mob already has his model from Project Playtime, so why not use this as an excuse to add in a fan favourite? Number 5. Enough faffing about. What is Poppy's plan? Ever since Chapter 1, we have constantly been kept in the dark about Poppy's true intentions. At the end of Chapter 1, just as we release her from her case, we black out, probably from that red smoke in her case. But then, just as Poppy is about to tell us something in Chapter 2, Mommy kidnaps her. At the end of Chapter 2, Poppy is just revealing her villainous side before she's cut off by whoever crashed the train. You know, I wonder if that train really was alive, just like the Make-A-Friend machine. If Catnap used his gas to put him to sleep, that could explain why the train crashed. In Chapter 3, Poppy is once again about to open up just as Kissy is attacked. Once more, we don't get to hear what she's about to say. Now, of course, this makes for a wonderfully dramatic effect, but I think 3 chapters of teasing is enough. We still don't have a good explanation as to why someone was so terrified of Poppy. I have of course theorized that Poppy is a villain, but she is adamant she is on our side, so she better start confessing soon. I swear to God, if Chapter 4 starts with Poppy getting cut off once again, I'm gonna have stern words. Stern words, I say. We still haven't learnt Poppy's true identity, why she was kept in a case next to Elliot's office, why she seems so against the prototype when he seems to be the only one caring for the orphans. I think it's time for Mob to stop messing around and finally give us something to work with. After all, they can't keep everything a mystery forever. So those are just some of the things we need to know in Chapter 4. I'm sure Mob will end up creating a bunch more mysteries and loose ends, but if they do, you know I'll be here to theorize over them. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave it a like, let me know what you desperately need to know in Chapter 4 in the comments, and if you really want to support the channel, I now have a Patreon where I post bonus videos and more. Look at all these wonderful people who already signed up. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.